So hopefully I'm live. Hopefully here it goes live. And I'm live. I'm live. Hopefully here it goes live. And I'm live.
I don't know if I'm on this camera. So we're just here getting set up. We're having some pizza. Sorry, I'm talking to Livestream. So carry on doing your thing. So we're just getting set up. We're getting some pizza in the back. Folks are getting settled in. Hopefully we're going to kick off in the next 10 minutes or so. So we'll kick off with the talk, talking about Firebase, building Firebase. And then we're just going to talk about just tech in general, just talk about things that excite us from a Google I/O. We have awesome speakers from the Flutter community, the Kotlin community. I'm going to be representing some of the cloud community here in Chicago, and GSCs as well are here. So we're going to figure it out. We're going to have a great time. So hold tight. We'll be right back.
I was thinking about maybe for August, just doing like a circle event. Because since I'm going to St. Louis for that season, and my kids starting kindergarten, it's getting pretty crazy, so we're maybe just
keep it as low stress as possible. Just do what you can to do the bare minimum.
I'll talk about that.
Yeah, so so this is a little bit of a different setup. So we're trying it out, given the boundaries and stuff. We have the full crowd here today. Everyone wave hi to the live stream. Look at that. People. It's great. It's awesome. So we're going to get set up here. We're just eating, just getting settled down. Hopefully the next few minutes, 5 or so minutes, we'll probably get kicked off. Hopefully you're hearing this. If you are in the chat, give me a thumbs up. Yeah, we're going to kick off with the talk, as I mentioned. Probably going to take a 4 or 5 minute swap, just getting some chairs switched around, and then we're just going to talk about Google I/O, anything exciting in the field. We have a lot of great folks from the Kotlin community, from the Flutter community, from the Cloud community, from the GDG community, from the GDSC community. We have a lot of people here today, so we're just going to be talking about what excites us. You know, some of the things. Google I/O has come and gone since May, but there's a lot of awesome things that came out of it. And then on top of it, what's coming next? What are some things that you're looking forward to, or what are some things you want to see? So hold tight. We'll be right back.
Yeah, they didn't want me telling people that they should be
I'm just kidding. All right, let's see. Here we go. Try to set up. Cool. Can you monitor if there's like thumbs up when I ask if there's audio? All right, so let's get started. First off, Livestream folks, if you can hear me, give me a thumbs up in the chat. We have someone watching to make sure. Cool. So we have a few topics today. It's quite a bit, but it's going to be exciting. It's going to be great. We have two topics. First, it's going to be a talk on building with Firebase. It's going to be an awesome talk. It's something we wanted. And as well as a Google I/O extended panel. We're just going to basically sit down. There's a lot of folks from a lot of communities here, which is awesome to see. I think this is one of our big collab events since everything pandemic-wise went down. So Flutter community's here. Some of the Kotlin folks are here. We have the Google Cloud community here. We have the GDG community here as well. So if this is your first time coming to one of these events, thank you and welcome. And you're always welcome at any of these events. And we hope to see you go to your events as well in the near future. So this is building with Firebase. What's next? Cool. We have our I/O extended panel. We have a great audience. We have Valeria representing from the Flutter community. There she is. She's great. We have Andrea from the Firebase team. We're going to have Amanda from the Kotlin community and myself representing from the GDG community. So we'll get all squared away. There's an SSID in the room. It should be Google Guest. Livestream folks, figure out your SSID at home. Next. Follow us on Twitter, or X, whatever it's called now. Yeah, as you can tell, these slides are live. Follow us, that's our handle for whatever the platform's called now. We also have a meetup, and also we have a community events where there's a link to our community events on there as well from our official platform. Generous, getting started, code of conduct. Look, we're all here to talk tech, learn from one another, be awesome to one another. If you see something, say something. If you don't feel comfortable saying it out loud, find me, find Dan in the back. There you go. Harassment really won't be tolerated here because at the end of the day, we're here to learn. Everyone's at different skill levels. Some folks are rock star programmers. Some folks are horrible. That's me. I'm horrible. And then ultimately, just always practice saying yes and. Never really say, no, you're doing it wrong. Focus on, okay, maybe that's what they understand for now, but focus on how can I help further this conversation forward in a positive light. So be nice to one another, that's it. I really don't have to do anything stupid, so cool. Next announcement, Google Cloud Next is now a month away almost. This is Google's big cloud events where you hear things about BigQuery, Kubernetes, GKE, all the things. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be live streamed, I believe, for free. There's also a live event actually back in California this year. So if you happen to be there, I think I'm going to be going. So just if you see me there, we can hang out, talk. But if not, join us in the live stream. It's going to be cool. And we may even do an event about it too, similar to this. And without further ado, let's get it started. Andrea, if you want to kick us off with Firebase and building with it. So everyone, let's go come.
All right, hello everyone. I'm Andrea. I'm an engineer on the Firebase team, although I'm taking a half-year break from Firebase to go teach at a HBCU, which is an historically black college and university as part of one of Google's DEI efforts. So I'm really excited about that. So apologies in advance if I don't know what the latest and greatest thing on Firebase is for probably the last month. Hopefully that shouldn't affect our talk today. So today I'm going to be talking about storing data. So if you've used Firebase before, you might know that we have some products to help you store data. We have Storage, Firestore, and Realtime Database. And we often get questions about what's the difference among all of these. So before I get started, how many of you have heard of Firebase before? Amazing. Oh wow, that's like almost everyone. That's awesome. How many of you have built with Firebase before? All right, not as many hands, but that's okay. I forgive you. So before I get into it, I'm going to introduce what Firebase is. So Firebase is Google's app development platform. It's based on Google Cloud Platform, GCP, and it integrates with other Google tools like analytics and ads. And because it's built on top of Google infrastructure, it's also designed to automatically scale. Firebase supports a lot of different client app platforms. So there's client-side SDKs for iOS, Swift, and Objective-C. Android, Java, and Kotlin, Web JavaScript, C++, and Unity for game developers, and Flutter. Firebase is a suite of almost 20 different products, and typically we want to think of it as a platform to help you go through the lifecycle of developing apps, which typically goes something like this. First, you have a great idea, amazing, and you want to build it, right? So these are the products that can help you do that. There's authentication that enables you to know a user's identity and to authenticate them to your app. CloudFirestorm and Realtime Database, which are both NoSQL databases, and we'll dive deeper into these two today. There's Cloud Storage to help you store big blobs of data like photos, videos, and audio content, and hosting, which knows what it sounds like, helps you put a web app onto the internet. After your app is built and deployed, you can monitor its performance by using Crashlytics and performance monitoring. And you can fix bugs and use Test Lab to test those fixes on all types of different devices that you might not have lying around at home. And finally, as your app hopefully reaches a stable state, you might think about growing your app, retaining your users, and getting more users. So to do so, there's these products. There's cloud messaging and in-app messaging to send notifications if you want to remind users about various events or tell them to purchase something. A/B testing to test any change before rolling it out to all of your users. And remote config for serving different user experiences based on different properties without needing to ask your users to update their app. So all of these products will help you decide what your users like in hopes of making them continue to use your app and tell their friends to use it too. So while Firebase does have a large variety of products, you can pick and choose which ones you want to use, and you don't have to use all 20 at once. So to use any of them, you basically just install the Firebase SDK into your app, and you basically have the functionality that you want. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of products, and today we're going to zoom in on 3, specifically ones that help you store information: Cloud Storage, CloudFirestorm, and Realtime Database. So I'm going to go over what each one of these are, and then do a comparison and contrast after that. So let's start with storage, because that's quite different in terms of use cases compared to Firestore and RTDB, Realtime Database. So storage is suitable for storing and serving user-generated content, such as photos, audio, and videos. And so these are typically big blobs of data that doesn't change often. And then you can store references to the content in a database, but it is not a database itself. So let's talk about CloudFirestorm next. It's a NoSQL database, and it follows a document model, which means that all of your data is stored in documents and collections. So you can think of a document as something like a dictionary or a table. So it has a set of key value pairs, which we refer to as fields, and the values can be a number of different types, from strings to numbers to binary values to JSON objects called maps. And so here we have a document containing the fields we saw on the previous slide. A document is stored in a collection, and documents cannot contain other documents, but they can point to collections that contain other documents, which can then point to sub-collections, and so on. All right, so that's a brief introduction of CloudFirestorm. Let's talk about Realtime Database. So Realtime Database is also a NoSQL database, and it stores data in a giant JSON tree. And a Realtime Database structure your data after your views. So here we see there's no edits and kill, which then will go on your app in a list. All right, before I go on, what questions can I help answer?
What are some thoughts in terms of structuring around collections? Like, how should someone approach, collections and sub-collections? Is there any recommendations or thoughts you would have? So, like, I see, like, milk, egg, and cheese, if you're building something new.
Yeah, so with RTDB, you actually don't have the concept of collections and documents. That is for Firestore, which follows the document model.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, I'll keep going. So let's talk about Realtime Database versus CloudFirestorm. So they're, again, both NoSQL databases used to store data. And they are also both client-first SDKs with no servers to deploy and maintain. And while perhaps database has real-time updates as its name suggests, CloudFirestorm also has real-time updates. And lastly, both have a no-cost tier, and then it's pay for what you use. So these are the similarities that these two databases have. So it sounds like a lot of similarities. Why do they both exist? Well, while some developers appreciated the real-time nature of RTDB for building features like chat, we found that a lot of developers wanted a traditional database where they could just fetch the data when asked. Although RTDB does support this with GET calls, unnecessary usage of it can increase the use of bandwidth and lead to loss of performance. And Firestore makes simple, one-time fetch queries much more natural and is built as a primary use case. You can still add support for listeners, so your clients have the ability to receive updates whenever your data changes in the database. So you actually have the flexibility with CloudFirestorm to retrieve data however you'd like. Okay. So Firestore sounds like it can do a lot of what real-time database can do. So why is RTDB still around? Well, one of the primary use cases for RTDB is when an app primarily needs to synchronize data. So RTDB is really fast at making writes to the database. And so RTDB is good for apps with a few gigabytes or less of data that changes frequently. Firestore, on the other hand, is fast at reading data and thus good for apps that have hundreds of gigabytes to terabytes of data that is read much more often than it is changed. So the reason for these differences is how the data is stored in each one. So as I mentioned before, with RTDB, data is stored in basically a giant JSON tree where there's not really much structure and you can kind of YOLO and do whatever you want. CloudFirestorm is much more structured and it's a document model database as we talked about before, which means that all of your data is stored in documents and collections and these documents consist of key value pairs, and these values can be of many types, again, as we covered before. So because the data is stored differently, the two are going to have different querying capabilities. RTDB supports basic querying, and trying to create a query across multiple fields is a bit of work and usually involves denormalizing your data. On the other hand, Firestore is better at advanced querying, sorting, and transactions, as it can automatically search across multiple fields. So you can chain filters and combine filtering and sorting on a property in a single query with Firestore, whereas RTDB queries can sort or filter on one property, but it can't do both at once. Another way querying is different between these two databases is that Firestore queries scale to the size of your result set, not to the size of your data. So this means that a search for the top 10 restaurants in Chicago for a restaurant review app will take the same amount of time whether your database has 300 restaurants, 3,000 restaurants, or 30 million restaurants. And this is because Firestore uses indices to do the querying. RTDB queries don't require an index, so the performance of certain queries degrades as the data set grows. With the querying structure for Firestore, queries are shallow, meaning they only return documents in a particular collection or collection group, and don't return sub-collection data. And RTDB is deep, so it will always return the entire subtree, whether or not you need it. Lastly, well, as I mentioned before, both products have a no-cost tier and then a pay-as-you-go tier. The pricing model is actually quite different. So RTDB primarily determines cost based on the amount of data that's downloaded, as well as the amount of data you have stored in the database. While Firestore does charge for these things as well, they are significantly lower than what you would see in RTDB. So instead, Firestore's pricing is primarily driven by the number of reads or writes that you perform. What this means is that if you have a more traditional app where your client is occasionally requesting larger chunks of data from your database, or a turn-based multiplayer game, you find that Firestore's pricing model might be much more favorable than if you used RTDB. Okay. On the other hand, if you have an app that's making a lot of number of reads and writes per second per client, like a group whiteboarding app, where you might be broadcasting everyone's drawing updates to everyone else several times a second, Firestore will probably be more expensive, at least for that portion of your app. And you can actually use both of these databases together, and that's also fun. So why would you want to use both of these databases together? If you have an app where for part of it, you have to write a lot, whereas for other aspects, you have to read a lot, you could use RTDB and Firestore respectively. Another use case is to detect which of your users or devices are actively online, also known as detecting presence. RTDB can be used to build a complete presence system, but if you need to do so with Firestore, both RTDB and Firestore can be used together with Cloud Functions to keep the databases in sync. Alright, so in summary, the major differences between RTDB and Firestore are the structure of the stored data, which then affects the speed of reading and writing to the database, as well as querying capabilities. And also the pricing model for both are different. And while Cloud Firestore and RTDB stores structured data that changes often, Cloud Storage is good for storing big blobs of user-generated content like audio, video, and images that don't change often. So that went a lot faster than I thought. Maybe I talked really fast, but that's all I have. Happy to take more questions about storage, RTDB, Firestore, or anything else. No promises there, but I'll try my best to answer questions. Yes?
So the common question I've seen is when you create a Firestore project, like
Yeah.
inside the Firebase console, there's usually a Google Cloud project that's created, and also like a Google Cloud Firestore. Sometimes it can get propagated. What's the best interface for like a developer? Should they be using, from your perspective, the Firebase console, or should they be going through the Google Cloud console, or is it kind of like a happy marriage between the two?
Yeah. So because I work on Firebase, that's how you use Firebase. Just kidding. So if you're using other things within Firebase, then I would recommend using Cloud Firestore inside of Firebase. If you're not, then and you're using other things inside of Google Cloud, then use Google Cloud. Yeah. So if you decide to use Firebase's Firestore, probably all of what you need is within Firebase, and then if it's not, then you can go to Google Cloud. But it'll tell you and kind of prompt you for things that you need to do in Google Cloud. Otherwise, you can kind of ignore it and pretend it's not there. Other questions? Yes?
A lot of people, when they're working with databases, they tend to think of relational databases like SQL and all those things.
Yeah.
What tips and tricks would you have for developers to start thinking more in a NoSQL like mindset as opposed to SQL?
Yes. The forever NoSQL versus SQL question. Well, I don't actually really know the answer to that. I'm not really a database expert. Does anyone else want to answer that question?
It's not an easy one. it really depends. It's the hardest one.
Yeah, so I would also say that it probably depends on what you're trying to do with your data. If you are convinced that you should use a SQL database, you should probably use a SQL database, and I'm not going to stand here trying to convince you that you should use a NoSQL database. I don't know what the pros and cons are for each database. You can probably Google it, and it would know more than what I can tell you right now. So that is my non-answer for you.
Thank you.
Yes. Other questions? Yeah.
How easy it is to delete the data from Firestore with respect to the price? So let's say like I have a millions of records in a Firestore which I'm just waiting to see that whether I have processed the certain records already or not. So if I don't want to return data in there, like if like 1 year history data, I just want to get rid of that. So from the price perspective, does it make sense to delete it, or I can just keep it as is there and it will incur the cost?
Yeah, so if you want to delete it, you can probably write a script to delete it all. I don't know if there's a button on the console to delete it all at once. But if you leave it there and you don't do any writes, it'll probably be okay. Let's check pricing real quick for Firestore and see if it costs anything to store stuff. So let us Google some things right now. Let's see, firebase.google.com.
Wow.
All right, so yes, you can store up to 1 gigabyte for no cost. And then I guess if you have more than that, then it's going to start costing you. So if you don't want to pay for that, you can either delete all of it or delete up to until you only have 1 gig left. Yeah. Yes.
Have you tried using Firestore data bundles, and is there any equivalent for RTD?
No, I have not. That is not helpful. Yeah, but I don't have anything to say on that because I don't know what that is actually. What is that?
It's sort of like using like a server-side cache. So with Firestore, you can create a bundle, which basically pulls data from Firestore, creates a bundle, which is basically a file and zip gets stored in cloud storage, and then you can expose that bundle to different clients. So whenever you need to run queries that are repeating themselves and you want to kind of share the same data across many clients and many users, if you have a bundle, you can read it from the bundle and thus not requiring Firestore server reads. So you save a bunch of costs.
Yeah, that makes sense. We can Google it, I guess, because I don't know the answer to that. Real-time database, data bundles. We'll look this up. I can spell On first glance, it seems like the answer is no, because it immediately starts talking about Firestore. Other questions I or Google can help answer. Yeah, what's up?
Would RTD be ideal for pulling a lot of data by API, structuring it, and then dumping it into a series of CSVs?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I heard if RTDB is better suited for
For pulling data by API and then structuring it and then dumping it into CSVs.
Oh, okay, so you want to get data and basically export to CSV.
Yep.
So yes, so real-time database can export to CSV. Firestore can only export collections and documents. Other questions?
I'm checking the live
Yeah.
stream too.
I have a question. I don't know if you've heard of MongoDB. What's the difference? Like, what are like the pros and cons compared to Firestore and MongoDB? Or do you think is there any differences? I assume there are, right?
I have not looked into the difference between MongoDB and Firestore, but we often get this question of why use Firebase versus these other platforms that are out there. And my answer to that would be, or even why Firebase versus Google Cloud. So my answer to that is when you're trying to develop an app, Firebase has a lot of the tools that you'll need to help you go through that life cycle, right? To build an app, to improve your app, look at bugs, performance, all that stuff, and to grow your users, right? So we have all of this, so when you're trying to build an app, you can get it all in one place. Firebase versus Google Cloud has, I don't know, maybe 100 different products, so it's really hard to know where to get started, right? Firebase kind of gives you an opinionated place of, hey, you're probably going to need these things, so here they are. Other questions? Yes?
If I start with Firestore and decide that maybe my application is more suited for real-time database, is there an easy way to migrate from one to the other and vice versa?
Unfortunately, because the data is stored in different ways, so again, Firestore is documents and collections, and real-time database is a big JSON tree. It's pretty hard to kind of convert one to another, so there's not really a button or anything where you can say, hey, move this to Firestore, hey, move this to RTDB. Other questions?
Cool. Well,
Yes?
What's the best part of working in Firebase? Like at Firebase?
Oh, the best part of working on Firebase? I really like my teammates. They're all really amazing people and all very intelligent and knowledgeable, and it's just a lot of fun to work with them. I also really like doing events like this because I get to talk to you all. That's actually one of my favorite parts and why I chose to be a developer relations engineer. I was a SWE before, and I really like talking to people and going going to events like this and just interacting with our users. So that's definitely one of my favorite parts of the job as well. Thanks for that question. And for all the other questions, even if I didn't know the answer. Yes?
So as you said, Firebase has entire application development cycle. Does it have domain-related templates as other Google products like AppSheet has domain-related application? Like using those templates, we can it can direct us to the application we would like to create. Does the Firebase has that?
If I understand the question correctly, I don't believe we do. Firebase, so to use Firebase, you usually have an idea for your app, and these are different products that can help you with functionality inside of your app so that you don't have to go build them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Which starts?
Which stuff?
The Firebase GitHub.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So, is that the domain that I'm talking about? Like domain related, like for example, if I would like to create, it will focus on what users I'm directing. Like if I'm directing on banking, it will create the app related to banking, agriculture. So I have worked on one of the Google products called AppSheet, and that has domains like that, templates, domains are template related. So does Firebase provide that? Majorly, that was my question.
Yeah, my answer is still no. But yes, we do have quick starts where if you want to play around and see how these different products work, you can go to our open source for whatever platform that you're trying to build on and take that and take a spin and play around with it. Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
So Firestore works mainly on hierarchical data structure. So are there any limitations in processing complex queries?
With Firestore, the current capabilities are better than RTDB. We do get a lot of feedback that the current capabilities are not where users want them to be, but we are working on it. Other questions? Yes?
What has been your experience with, now that you're working remotely, or how long have you been working remotely? What has your experience been like since you started? Has it changed like the dynamics with your team?
Yeah, so I started at Google almost 5 years ago. It'll be 5 years next month. So I started in the New York City office, and I was there for about 1.5 years before the pandemic hit. So when the pandemic hit, March 2020, we all went and worked remotely, and I'm still remote actually. Because I spent about 1.5 years with my actual team, I felt very close to that team. But since then, I've moved on to another team, my developer relations team, and I don't feel the same bond with them. It hasn't impacted my work per se, but I think just kind of the team spirit or the team feeling is not quite as strong. But that's also difficult because Firebase DevRel is split West Coast, East Coast, Europe. So it'd be really hard to get the team all together. Actually, we're doing that in a few months, but consistently having us all together is not a thing that we do. But it hasn't affected my work. It just has affected how well I know people on my team, I guess. Yeah. Yes?
Firebase was acquired by Google.
Yes.
How big is the team, like the engineering team? Like, what is that relationship with the product team and the rest of the team?
Yeah, so the Firebase engineering team is, I think, 200 or 300 people. As a relation with Google Cloud, we're built on top of Google Cloud, but we're actually in different orgs inside of Google, which is really interesting. So I actually don't work directly with Google Cloud, but I'm sure there's collaboration somewhere in there. Yeah. Other questions? I don't. Yeah.
When you say that the team is getting together soon, is there a conference coming or something?
We are doing an offsite, so all the Firebase DevRel team is getting together in SF just to bond and talk about DevRel and Firebase and all that stuff. Yeah.
In Prague, maybe?
Sorry?
In Prague?
Yes, we do. Wait, Prague?
Yeah.
Yes, that is coming up in September or so, right? Yeah, there's an event there. I forgot what it is. Not super plugged these
Flutter
days.
Firebase Festival.
Yes, Flutter and Firebase. That's right. Yeah.
So I think maybe these are good questions. Let's set up for the panel, and then maybe we ask these questions. Again, it's not just going to be folks reading it. So let's get set up here, and then we can actually start talking about this stuff. So let's give them a round of applause. Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna try and see. I don't know if we're all gonna fit on that little tiny table. Like, I really don't want to have this. So I think here, and then I'll just aim the camera this way. Because then Dan just do that here. Yeah. This dance will be back here, and then I can just aim the camera. So. So that's good. I'm gonna aim the camera that way.
Where am I going to be, Joe?
I think behind, because it is. It is.
Are the mics working?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and see if I can get that set up right now too. All right. I'm thinking. Can you move one of those chairs? Like, and I'll tell you, like, out of the corner chair, and I'll tell you the frame of reference. Yep. To your right. More out. So, like, do you see that black marker there, or that thing on the ground? Perfect. And can you like make a kind of a U-y? Yeah. Yeah. All right. Now we're cooking. Cool. I think if we put that other chair on there, it'll work. And I'll take that seat because I don't want to be in the camera either.
This one at the end?
Yeah, that one at the end, like right on top of that one over there, would be dope.
That sounds like.
Cool. Yep. That's good. Yeah, that's perfect. And we got a good view here too. Would work.
Yeah, this one works, I think.
Test. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. All right, cool. Let's see. We'll just pass it around and we'll figure it out.
We'll all just shout loud.
Complete because it's not going to work also. So.
Cool.
I
I think so. Because you have this mic and it's a lot easier to hear you too.
Yes.
It's kind of cool. You're able to like it.
I guess this makes it look like I'm more prepared. Cool. We're raising. Go up.
All right. So
while we figure this out.
1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, cool. We figure this out.
So, as many of you know, Google I/O was back in May, and some awesome announcements are there. But in general, it's been a long time since May, and there's a lot of awesome things that we're all working on. So in short, we have a lot of folks on this live stream here in the audience. So we just wanted to just talk tech, and I think it's kind of cool that we have folks from the Flutter community. Do you want to introduce yourself? And maybe just pass it down.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming. My name is Valeria Duran Ruiz. I am a co-organizer for Flutter Chicago. I'm very excited to be here. I work with Flutter every day now.
Hi, my name is Amanda Hinchman-Dominguez. I am a co-org for Chicago Kotlin User Group and Kotlin GDG, and I'm also excited to be here.
Hi, I'm John Burns. I also co-organize the Chicago Kotlin User Group. I'm a platform engineer at Grubhub by day. I also maintain the KT-Link Gradle plugin.
I'm Andrea.
I'm Dan. I help co-organize the GDG Chicago meetup. By day, I do Google Analytics and Looker Studio dashboards at a web agency. Not that exciting. Cool.
well, this is giant concrete pillar in the middle, so people are like trying to see who.
Hey everybody, my name's Joel. We're here. There's a human behind this concrete pillar. I'm sorry. I run the local GDG Cloud community. We work closely with them to do our meetups. And sometimes we do co-sponsored meetups as well. But by day, I am a delivery engineer and a director of platform engineering at the Aspen Group. So, cool.
So I'm gonna actually go not panel really quickly. I know there's some students here, and I know GDSC is a thing. So if you're a GDSC lead, I know at least one of you is here. So,
Yes.
A, thank you for coming. B, what college are you? Northeastern. Is there any other ones that? No? Okay. Well, if you go to Northeastern, talk to Amanda if you don't know her already. So, and the GDSE is Google Developer Student Clubs. So, yeah. Anyways, I/O. Fun times.
A lot of announcements.
Yeah, a lot of announcements, a lot of things, lots of hardware, kind of, a lot of AI. So let's get into this. I really am horrible at preparing questions, so I let Bard do this for me. So let's see how well this goes. And I really didn't prepare them well, so this could be good, could be bad. Bring your own questions.
Generative AI.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
You know,
Generative
AI.
AI. So, generative AI.
All right, so we're all here from respective communities and have different expertise. I know Joel, you're a cloud guy. What cool new things were coming cloud-wise for you? Obviously not everything announced is exciting.
Yeah, honestly, like it's gonna sound really dumb, but Terraform support for Firebase is awesome. If you have, I don't know, inside Firestore rather, inside the Google Cloud Console, if you've ever been tasked to manage it before, it's interesting. So before it was a lot of console commands or a lot of CLI commands. Terraform is something that I live with and breathe every day. So as an infrastructure engineer, it's awesome that we can configure it that way. It will be, and on top of it, the support for multiple multiple databases inside a single project was awesome. So if you've ever had to do a Firestore database inside a Google Cloud project, historically you were limited to one project, one database. Now they're testing a preview of having multiple databases per project. Oh, it's so great because I don't have to have Firebase 1, Firebase 2, Firebase 3 anymore. So that's awesome. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna move it down the line. We'll go with Andrea, right? Did I say the name?
What's exciting?
I just want to make sure I had the name right, to be honest with you. But yeah, what's exciting in Firebase?
What's exciting in Firebase? Well, I haven't been working on Firebase for the past month, so I'm not sure how to answer the question. So pass.
That works.
Okay,
John, go for it.
I'll talk about some Kotlin stuff. So there were, I think, 3 big kind of announcements that happened at Google I/O and KotlinConf around the same time. So one is that for Gradle, the build tool Gradle, Kotlin is now the preferred language there. So like, how many people out there use Maven? All right. How many people out there use Gradle? All right. Ant? Oh! There's one. Okay. Awesome. Well, anyway, yeah, Gradle's a build tool that is used pretty often in the Java space and Android space, and it's traditionally had a Groovy DSL that you use to configure it, and that's like 2010 now, and so they've moved on from that, and Kotlin is now the preferred language to use. They have good documentation there. The one downside of it is if you're Googling for how to do this in Gradle, you're probably going to get a lot of Groovy examples back in search results still. So that's just one thing to watch out for. Another thing is a new backend for Kotlin was announced called Kotlin Wasm. So if you have heard of Wasm as WebAssembly, it runs in your browser, but compiling Kotlin to Wasm is not like compiling Kotlin to JS, which is something you can do. It's not really like that. It's also not like compiling Kotlin to native either, because although WebAssembly has the word assembly in it, it's actually closer to something like JVM bytecode. It's an intermediate, low-level language that ends up running on the browser. So that's a whole new target for compiling Kotlin and multi-platform that is really starting to gain some ground. And then the other big announcement is like basically not really an announcement, but the K2 compiler, Kotlin 2.0, not really introducing anything major on a language level. It's really just all about this K2 compiler, brand new next generation compiler for Kotlin. That's supposed to, give us sunshine and rainbows. We'll see when it's actually out. But you can preview using it today, and that's available. So I'll pass it to Amanda now.
Thanks, John. I think he covered a good amount of stuff. I know Google I.O. talked about a couple AR related items with Kotlin. I don't know too much about that, but in terms of Kotlin 2.0 and also the new targeted languages, unless you're working with like different targets, like you're probably not going to really notice changes in your day-to-day other than, oh, you know, like the IDE is working like a little bit faster. Unless you're getting into writing like compiler plugins, that's where that stuff really starts to matter. But on a day-to-day, like when you're working with Kotlin, you're just it's gonna work a whole lot faster. And it's kind of like really the big thing with Kotlin right now, at least from what I'm working with from day to day.
Awesome. For Flutter, something about me is that I work with Flutter now all the time, but I come from a background of native iOS. So, and still I work with releasing 2 iOS devices. So something exciting for me is usually like making iOS a little bit better. And 2 things that came up is actually the checkbox widget, which to me is exciting for Cupertino. We have it now in 2023. And also something that is not necessarily like iOS specific, but it does make it better, is that they changed out for the rendering engine, instead of Skia, we have Impeller now, and it actually does make a difference in like the yanking build. Sometimes we used to have in iOS, and like Android would work better, because Gradle, so it's more into the Android side, but that was exciting. And then, so that is exciting for the iOS side, that just stuff is a lot smoother now. For that, and then something else is that Dart is 100% null safe. Yay. So we have been talking about SAM null safety for a while now in the Flutter world, because Flutter since like 2010 or something like that, we started, I don't quote me on exactly which release it was, but like since then we've been pushing for 100% null safe code, and now with Dart being 100%, having 100% SAM null safety, that is very helpful, because you can't write it, you can't write it any other way now. And that's basically what has been very cool for this year in Flutter. iOS smoother rendering.
Want to introduce yourself? Sorry, we went to have a little share.
Hi, my name is Amanda, and I'm the university lead at Northeast University. And as university lead, I had the opportunity to go to these events. So I was at Google I/O Connect, and it was great. I really loved learning about AI, specifically LLMs, large language models, and their Palm API, specifically how it's incorporated with web development. I don't know if we have any idea. Was the web technologies that...
You're being my web person right now.
Oh, jeez.
I can do a little, but I've lost touch with that world.
But yeah, that's who I am.
Also, I changed my answer on what I'm most
Yes!
I didn't have enough time to think about it, because, you know, I was a long time ago. So I've worked on remote config for a very long time, both as a software engineer and on dev role. So something that came out during I/O is real-time updates for remote config. So remote config is a product that lets you change behavior based on user properties without having the user download a new version of your app. So that's what remote config is. And in the past, you basically have to write some code to make those values update, make those behaviors, like you have to write some code to make those behaviors come in after you update what those behaviors are. So now instead of doing that, you kind of automatically get that, and you don't need to do the thing where you get the value. So that's exciting. And since I was talking about Firestore, we have count now as one of our queries. That's exciting because a lot of people have been kind of asking for it. So yay, we are working on our queries, as I mentioned before.
So I know I touched a little on AI before. How has it touched your world? Because I feel like it started to seep into everyone's ethos in some way or another.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you want to go on the line, or do you want to...
Yeah, sure. I don't need to... And if anyone has questions out there, feel free to
shout them out and we'll read them out back or whatever. Yeah. So I'll kick it off and then we can go down. But using the power of generative AI. No, I'm kidding. So in short, I think it's basically everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in our IDEs, but I think what I'm most excited for was a small snippet / demo of how you can use Duet AI inside of the Google Cloud Console. So it's not supposedly super advanced to start, but it's going to grow over time. But as a DevOps / infra engineer, most of the things that we get asked is, how do I optimize this query? And sometimes the answer is like, wow, that's, how do I do a select? What is BigQuery? How do I run a query in BigQuery? So one of the demos that they had was using Duet API inside the console. You can ask it a question like, how do I select IDs from this data set? And it was able to give you a very basic example. Nothing production ready, but it was enough to unlock that spark. That like, oh, I think I know how to do this now. Or at least I know what to Google. That's the next thing, right? So that was really exciting for me to see because that saves me a lot of the getting started. Does it replace it? No, but I think it's gonna be great. And especially if you're a data engineer, that's gonna be really nice, especially to show business people. Shift left isn't just in the DevOps space, the dev space. It's happening even at the business space. The business people are getting more involved in tech. So, we don't want to wake up Friday and get reports, and we want to be more reactive and maybe do real-time reports and real-time data. That's what got me excited. So, helping people do great things in a console.
Well, since you all, hopefully, maybe, I don't know, heard about Google I/O, there was a lot of talk about AI. So suffice to say, Google is now focused on doing AI, and Firebase is in Google, so we are maybe doing things as well. I don't really know what exactly we're doing, but Google is kind of going in that direction. Something that is personally impacting me, this is not really related to doing tech or Firebase things, but since I mentioned I'm going teaching in the fall, well, apparently students also know about ChatGPT and use it to do their homework and things. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about, how to catch that, how to hopefully, I haven't really made up my mind, actually I have, about what to do with ChatGPT yet. So that's one of the challenges that I'm going to be facing very shortly.
I think this one's my turn to pass because it really hasn't affected my world very much lately, but I know a lot of people at our company are excited about some of the productivity gains they might gain from it. Like, I know IntelliJ now has a feature where it'll write your commit message for you based on the code that you changed, like your change set. It remains to be seen if those are high quality commit messages or not. We'll see, but a lot of people playing around with it, I know, but it's not something that has made a big impact yet in my world, I would say.
Yeah, I'm thankful to stay the same. I think some folks on our Android team, we tried a couple fun experiments with ChatGPT, and it can only write very basic Android code. I don't think we're quite there yet. But that said, I hope that that sort of thing kind of stays that way. I don't think we want AI touching our lives that much that quick. It's always good to talk about the possibility of regulation.
Yeah.
That's my unhinged take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Responsible AI.
I'd say one thing that is a lot is issue on licensing and what is the licensing implications based on the training set data used to generate these LLMs, because that's very much a legal open question right now. So kind of a wait and see approach on that as well.
Yeah, that said, I think it's also important to ask ourselves, whatever we're using AI for, is that the proper problem to use AI with? Because there are a lot of examples that we can already start pointing to, even with, I think we're already starting to use AI for layoffs in some sectors. Ooh,
Yeah.
kind of a spicy topic.
I guess for me, it won't be as spicy. Honestly, something that has begun to creep into my day-to-day life is that something that I don't do, I guess, professionally. It's not technically my job, but something that I love to do is do tutorials and developer relations type things and then these events and stuff like that. So something that I have liked to actually use is more things like grammar Grammarly and stuff like that will check my writing for me and tell me like, this is like good grammar and stuff like that, especially like English is my second language. And sometimes I, like second guess myself, is this well said, well structured? And also, I have been living in the States for so long that Spanish is my first language, but I have found myself, like I've always worked and lived my life as an adult in English. And now when I'm trying to do like technical writing in Spanish, I find myself second guessing myself in my own native language. So that has been like the helpful part that I've been using AI for, is to check for my technical writing. And that's mostly what I guess excites me, but yeah.
I really don't have any comment. I would say as a web developer, a fear I would have is AI, not being included in the web world. But after going to Google I/O and seeing that AI does have a spot in the web world, reassuring that end.
I do have a follow-up question, if you're okay with it, Andrea. So when you mentioned, because I would love to know your thoughts on this. So when you said, I don't know what I'm like exactly going to do with ChatGPT, if you kind of have an idea. I would love to know what your thoughts are on if you're a professor or if you teach anybody and like the coming in of ChatGPT. Because like for me, I have students and stuff that and some people like teach and stuff, and I don't know at this point like what to think about that.
Yeah, so my initial thoughts were, if they want to use ChatGPT and plug them, they're using ChatGPT is not going to get them past an interview, it's not going to get them the job or teach them how to do the job. And I'm teaching an intro to computer science class. And so I'm basically like, well, if you don't want to take advantage of the fact that I'm here, that you have access to other Googlers as well, and I know how to teach because I've done this before, and I generally, I think, know how to teach and can get good results, and this is something that you want to do later in your career, then fine by me, right? Like, if this is something you want to do for a future, you're going to have to make it up somehow. And I think my job here is really to motivate the students so that they want to learn. And if they use ChatGPT to kind of check their work or maybe get other ideas, I'm not super opposed to that actually. I do think that because ChatGPT is out there, they should learn how to use it. But it's really hard. So one problem that I see with ChatGPT is the code that it writes might not be the best way to write code, right? So an exercise that I would like students to do is write their own code and then look at ChatGPT and see what the differences are and maybe make a judgment call of how, like which one is better and why. But as an intro class, like that might be hard to do. So like, I don't know about that. But I do want to like, let them use it if they need it, but also tell them that, hey, this shouldn't be your only resource, right? You should learn the material that I'm teaching you so that, you can at least like get past an interview as well, right? Because again, if you just use ChatGPT, you're not gonna be able to pass an interview if that is your goal. So those are my thoughts on that. Okay.
I saw him
You first, and then we'll go to you. We got you next.
So, along with that, my thought, and I was gonna ask Amanda as well, first off, how pervasive do you think currently something like ChatGPT is amongst college students that you've seen now? And then in your case, Andrea, if you're gonna be teaching, because it is really just a resource, is it something that, and I'm sure old school professors are gonna sit there and try and outlaw it for some reason, is it really a matter of finding a way for students to use it and make it part of the documentation process of how it was used in order for them to learn the material?
I mean, as a student, I'm not going to deny, but yeah, ChatGPT is, commonly used within students in the university. But on top of that, you gotta think about how's the professor, I feel like students need a good professor, a professor that's passionate about what they're teaching, a professor that's gonna care about you, and they're not gonna go to ChatGPT, because they're lacking that from their professor. Some professors just, stare at their screen and just keep lecturing for hours. So I guess it just, depends on how your professors are at the end of the day. But ChatGPT is, students are getting hands-on to it. It's not something that can be stopped quickly, but it's definitely there.
Yeah, to answer your question about whether I would want students to document what resources they use, I have actually thought about that. The downside of, I think, well, the upside of that is then I can see what they're doing. The downside of it is I have to read through that for 110 students every time they turn in an assignment, which I really don't want to do. So I think, yeah, that's food for thought for me, I guess. But I think, and kind of along the lines of what Amanda said, right, my job, I think, is to motivate students to want to learn, and how would they learn that, even if it's using ChatGPT is my goal at the end of the day. So I don't think, so initially my thought was I'm going to put all these guardrails around preventing them from using it and from cheating and all this, but I decided, and talking to a friend, I have a really close friend who cheated all through high school and cheated half through college. So and my perspective was I studied really hard and did everything. I didn't cheat in school. So our perspectives were really different. And he said that halfway through college he stopped cheating because he was finally motivated to do the things that the teacher was teaching, right? So that motivation is this is why I kind of changed my thought. He also said if students want to cheat, they're gonna cheat regardless of what rules you put around them, right? So I think that was a motivating factor for me to not try to do that. I've been spending a lot of time thinking about how to catch cheating, and I really hate doing that because that is not the point of my class, right? So I think really trying to motivate students. And he also said kind of what Amanda said, when he cared, or when he saw that the instructor or professor cared about students a little bit more, he was less inclined to cheat, right? He cheated less. I don't know what that means, but that's what he said, right? So I think also my job to be there is to support and motivate and hopefully get students to where they want to be. So I think if I do my job properly, then hopefully they'll be less inclined to cheat. And for students who want to cheat, as I said before, just let them cheat because they're going to try to do that anyway, right?
First, thanks for the presentation, and I have a question for Andrea. So, while working on the Firebase team, have you ever worked with Firebase ML?
I have not. But what is your question? I can hear it, I guess.
Generally, what do you think are the perspectives of it, for the future?
Yeah, I'm very, very far away from that product, so unfortunately I don't know.
Alright. I'm trying not to go all AI, but I feel like so much of I.O. was AI this year.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's why I'm like.
Are you sure?
I don't want to be like that guy that's like AI, and I'm so.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm really trying to use AI to not give me questions about AI.
See, it's like the machine is trying to tell me more about myself. So you're kind of out of the matrix.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I have a question. What's something cool that you've worked on the last 3 months that you can obviously share without revealing any company secrets?
No, that's to me. Let me think about what I've worked on. Last 3 months. I'll talk about what I don't want to talk about what I'm currently sort of still working on. That's going to get launched soon, so I don't want to talk about that. What was the last thing I worked on? Probably a blog post about FCM, which is Firebase Cloud Messaging Token Management. This is a whole big topic that we often get questions about. Our top Stack Overflow questions about FCM are about managed token management. So I wrote a blog post and wrote some code to go along with it. So that's been cool. Yeah.
Okay, well, I can talk a little bit about that, but I don't know how interesting it'll be to the audience here, but I work on the service platform engineering team at Grubhub, so it's a lot of back-end stuff. Something that we've rolled out recently is some big improvements to the way that we roll out changes to our platform. So we use microservices. We have about 160 microservices, and we don't do the monorepo thing. We have 160 different repositories pull in our libraries and use them to build the microservices. And so when we make a change in our framework, it has the potential of breaking everyone downstream, right? We put it into a place where we can actually detect usages of our APIs throughout all of those repos and know who is using what APIs. So if we want to change something, we can track who's using that API first, work with the people that own those services. We have a dashboard and everything that you can see who's using this certain API that we're thinking about removing or deprecating. And as you know, we have a dashboard and it turns yellow and then red once the due date gets there. Get people off that API so that when we remove it, we know we're not going to break anyone. So it might seem like a lot of but the quality of life for the teams trying to implement like product features really quickly and don't want to be like interrupted by like, oh, this like method changed in our framework has been really nice as something we're proud of. So.
I can't talk about what I do at my day job, but I've been doing a lot of compiler research the last few months, and I have like a neat little GitHub repository. I think it's called Crash Course on the Kotlin compiler. And if you want to stare into the abyss, I feel like that's a good place to start. So yeah.
And that's in your GitHub?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You should share it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Send us a link and we'll share it on the blog, don't worry. On the post here.
For me, you know, I love organizing in general, and that includes my code. So something that I've been working on lately is actually building like a software development kit for my company. So it's for Flutter, and it's a lot of like just building blocks so that we can, first of all, codify how we usually do things, but then also just build a little bit better throughout the team. So that is something that I have loved doing, just getting that together and then building it and thinking about like, oh, how is it going to work in terms of architecture with all our other products and stuff. So that has been cool.
For the past 3 months, I've done a bunch of SEO, search engine optimization, and front-end development. Fun stuff.
So this is gonna be maybe a boring little comment, but who here knows like load balancers inside of Google Cloud? Have you seen them before? Anyone familiar with them? Yeah. So there's a lot of developers. That's some hands. This is some hands. This is some hands. All right. So I mean, one of the coolest things that I've been working on within Google Cloud lately has been the latest release of the load balancers for application load balancers. They're backed by technology, Envoy-based proxies. You can do a lot of cool things. So for example, imagine if you wanted to mirror API traffic to a microservice without taking down production, but see a replicated copy to your new microservice. You can do that inside the load balancer. Let's say you wanted to do reroutes for like specific URLs. That's kind of been there, but more importantly, you can also modify response headers. You can say that, hey, mobile users, go to this new API. This is extremely instrumental right now because I don't know how many of you have to deal with the monoliths in your companies. Monoliths are monsters. They are, you know, things just kind of morph and randomly break at times. You know, something is missing a database index and crash down. Teams are able to quickly result and create fixes, release it into production, and then get confidence that it's going to work before merging it and breaking potentially everyone. So I'm nerding out on load balancers, but I really, really like the rules engine inside the latest release from the Google application load balancer.
All right, I have a question now for something. Amanda, I'm sorry, you're getting picked on now. So, not that Amanda, the next Amanda.
Oh. Two Amandas.
So, said you're doing a bunch of search engine stuff. And at I/O, Google announced the whole Search Labs. Have you seen any effects on your SEO with the generative search stuff starting to show up in search results at all?
In the search engine?
Yeah.
I would say so. So the company that I work at right now is a small business. So we're basically helping to get them more recognized on the web. And we've been working with Google, like the Google technologies to do this actually. But it's like 50-50. We've gotten up, but it's not as efficient as it should be. But it's something. I'd say so. It could be a little more faster, but I mean.
Yeah. Joel, since you're the cloud guy, the workspace labs that they rolled out, have you done, I guess have any of you guys done any of the stuff with
I
that?
haven't touched that.
So when you say workspace lab, in terms of
Like Duet AI, or Duet, or whatever, yeah, whatever.
yeah, in terms of like creating like forms and like all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
In fact, I actually just used it a little bit to make a form. I kind of knew how to create it. I just asked it to create it. So
Literally did not know he did that, but I knew we ran out to do a form. So this is
yeah,
great.
so AI is great for quick little things like that, but it was able to ask it just like, by me simply typing the question of, what is your name? It knew that it was a short answer for it. It knew, I asked something like, write me a quick, next to for what went wrong, and it was able to do paragraphs. I just kind of right now.
So what you're telling me is the survey that we're getting in a little while here.
It was generated by
generated by AI. Awesome.
See, there's gonna be a question at the end to see how many times the word AI was used, and then that's like a surprise or something. No.
Yeah. So, trying. Anyone else in the audience got any questions to carry me along in this? What?
Oh, there's a question.
All right, that guy.
I got a question about the Flutter. You said the company you work for does primarily Flutter. Is that like clients are recognizing value in Flutter, or like what are you building for small businesses, or where are you seeing that kind of market being created?
Yeah, well, Flutter, since it can, it's cross-platform, and now we're like stable on the web and stuff, then you can definitely build a lot more. In my company, we are mobile first, and we're focusing on mobile. And we have just found that it's just so useful to be able to ship with one code base new features, because I come from, like teams that were very siloed between iOS and native iOS and native Android, and being able to like truly ship a feature, which to my eyes is to be able to have it in both iOS and Android, same database, everything's just working, and then the feature's just out now for both platforms, because we are looking into releasing products that go in both stores, not just one. So that is where we have found the value for Flutter to really come out for us.
I have another question for you to follow up about Flutter. So coming from a Kotlin perspective, a big thing that JetBrains has been pushing for Kotlin is Kotlin multi-platform. It's a very different approach to cross-platform mobile app development. And so I'm just kind of wondering, like, in the real world, because I'm not in this, I'm a back-end engineer, like, are people using both? Is there kind of a trend going one way or the other? What's succeeding, or what are people interested in, or like, kind of where's that at?
So to start with your question, with people using both, do you mean, do people have one code base for Flutter and then another for native, or what do you mean with that question?
Or like Kotlin I don't know, like, do people use both in the same organization, maybe for different things, or like kind of all in on one or the other?
I guess they could, and then what happens with Flutter, and for example, native and stuff, there are different things that different platforms are going to be useful for and really ready for at different times. So for example, back in 2019, I remember I wasn't working on that, but I went to Flutter Interact in New York, and I met this man who had a startup in Colombia, and he brought up that he was building this startup where they wanted like a live, so like Google, basically what Google Maps is now, but for his native app, and he wanted to build that for Flutter, and then he went to ask the Flutter team, and then they said something about like, you know what, we are not really ready for that, and I would recommend actually React Native instead of Flutter, because we just, like Google Maps would have to be completely rebuilt for Flutter for you to be able to do like such an interactive. I don't know if you guys remember, but like back in 2019, 2018, AR and virtual reality and AR was what AI is today. It was like all the rage, and everybody wanted to build augmented reality games and stuff like that. So that's basically what was going on. And what they were saying is Flutter right now, we're just focusing on 2 dimensions. And if you want like virtual reality or something like that, it's not for you. So it depends on the product, I think. And I think, I hate the phrase, it's just so, it's so true, but I hate the phrase, there's no silver bullet. But it's so true. It's like, it really depends on what you're building. So for example, with the new rendering engine that we have with Flutter, and the fact that stuff is a lot more seamless, and with that, they also introduced shaders, which makes it so that you can do, we have this, there's this product, it's not a Google product, but I have found that it's really fun. It's called the Rive engine that I recommend if you do Flutter apps or something, to check it out. And it's really cool for responsive animations if you want something like that, which the thing is that today, mobile apps really need to look beautiful. So the fact that we can have shaders now, I haven't used it enough to really tell you, but I can't imagine it's going to be like Rive, but it's like a little, like a very light version of that. So yeah, it depends on what you're building.
Before we go to the question, I want to just mention one thing on Flutter. So at my organization, we're definitely using Flutter heavily for our apps. What's awesome is it takes the complexities of having, our team, the mobile team is relatively small, and a lot of prior work was contracted out. So we had tons of companies making great apps, but they never really were our apps. So it was always daunting for like the small dev team, for the mobile team to kind of get started. What was great though was, hey, I can write it once and build it multiple times, and then getting that visibility into things like forms. Where I find that Flutter really shines is especially in like disconnected modes. So we have tablets in our medical offices that we hand out to people. There's 24,000 of them. Like we really can't publish an app on the App Store, so we have to sideload it through various means of the App Store stuff. We're having that out and being able to do quick POCs and roll out those apps, it's been pretty nice. Especially that sometimes it's better to render it on the website, and with the latest release in stable, that was one of our advantages. So I think it was actually pretty cool. Not saying there's anything wrong with doing multi-platform anyways. It was just really nice to be able to say, oh, we can just do this in a quick 1, 2, 3, and just get it done. Now long term, as products become more stabilized, we probably will weigh the value of each and things and maybe go native for some more apps. But right now, in the ideation phase of just getting something out there, see if it even has wings, it's awesome.
All right, before we get this, in the back of the question.
Yeah, I've got a question related to Flutter. So, is there any update on the Flutter game engine?
Is there an update on the Flutter game engine?
Flutter game
right?
engine. Is there an update on the Flutter game engine?
Yeah.
Not to the best of my not to the best of my knowledge. That's such a good question. I need to get back to you on that. I know that there's like renderings now, and that is something cool for folks who make games.
It's just the basic pattern, like it's nothing like beyond that. That's it for the Flutter game.
But something that I want to bring up with that is that so Flutter is open source, and what's really cool is that I have found that the Flutter team is always very open, even though they have, of course, the things that they are working on and that they're going to work on. That is available like on GitHub, and you can see it on yourself, not only what has been released, but what's going to be released and what's coming down the pipeline. But I have found that because they're open source and because they're very open to feedback, so if there is enough like push from the community to build a certain feature, I have found that they usually would. So I'm not saying that they will, and I don't even work at the Flutter team, but I'm just saying that whenever you need like a new feature or something, definitely voice it and just write it out on GitHub and let them know, because many times people will join in and say, oh, I would love that too. And then if there's enough people asking for it, I have found that they usually would go with it. And something else that I wanna just finish out the previous question with is that it also depends not only what you're working on, but also like which like areas of the world your product's gonna be on. So for example, like speaking of being offline and stuff, we have found that like Flutter is incredibly popular. For example, in Europe, India, I have found a lot of people who use it. Then in Latin America, it's also huge. So, and a lot of people in those areas need like an half-hour work also offline. So that is also something that goes into not only the product that you're building, but you have to build for the possibility that folks will maybe not have Wi-Fi 100% of the time. But for your question, does that answer your question? Yeah.
So we'll keep answering questions, but I also know that a lot of you are like eagerly looking at your train schedules and stuff. So if you have a quick second, I would strongly suggest you all look at this QR code and fill it out. If you've been to GDG meetups before in Chicago, we used to do some cool things in large groups of
Yeah, we used to have nice giveaways.
We used to have nice giveaways.
So back to this.
Yeah, so fill this out real quick. Don't have to be super long, but you know, put your name, alias. You have to be here to this win. And then there's the link, and then we'll see. We'll do a little raffle at the end here. So
it's our AI generated form that we're talking about earlier.
Using our AI generated spinning wheel. Using our AI generated. Yeah, this is our very light AI generated form. I was able to create this in a minute. So cool. Any other questions in the audience? While we kind of just everyone take some time.
I got one more question, Flutter, for anyone working in Flutter, especially web. Is there any workaround for SEO or future plans for SEO? I know a web app isn't the same as a website, but is that something clients have wanted or you wanted to build or implement SEO in Flutter?
So tracking analytics within the apps?
More just like, because it serves like it just paints the canvas and you can't really do like
So you can't do H tags and
yeah, exactly.
I'm assuming titles can hopefully be done.
There's like very minimal stuff you can do.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So just wondering if anyone's kind of SEO tips for Flutter.
Anyone?
I got nothing.
Flutter, nothing. No, I don't. Unfortunately, I don't know. So
unfortunately, I haven't played with it enough in its recent stages to.
One of
that's a good question though.
Yeah. I don't really work with the website.
I might play with it a little bit and get dangerous.
So I've done Flutter web projects, but the answer is basically no.
Right.
Yeah.
Dang, see?
That's what it seemed like, but I still want to mess around.
Everyone's like, maybe, no. That's okay, because it's something you worked on, right? So, and usually it's being, I don't know, I'm a big open source fanatic, by the way, so like, having something like open source, all it might take is a question on that, and then someone's like, yeah, why don't we have that? And what can we do?
I don't think Flutter will target websites or landing pages. I think web apps, Flutter is going to be a big player eventually, but for landing pages and all of that, you can use like Webflow or WordPress. I don't think that, and the SEO problem it's a big problem because there are a lot of security concerns. I talked about this a few weeks ago with Craig Labus, who's the Flutter face right now, and I asked him like this exact question. His answer was like, it's a problem and there's no clear answer and there's no clear path forward and we're not dealing with that right now.
That's what seemed to be the top answer in the forums was have a landing page, have your web app, and do the SEO on the landing page. So
there's something I'm kind of excited for. In Chicago in November, I don't remember the exact dates, there's a huge conference called KubeCon. It's like Cloud Native Con as well. It's here in Chicago. It's actually going to be in Chicago. Yeah. So exactly. So you should get those tickets quick because they're pretty expensive. But yeah, it's gonna be here in McCormick Place. So like every year, this is like all the Kubernetes maintainers, folks working on CNCF projects. It's awesome. I'm super excited because it's a conference I usually attend every year. So you get to see some pretty awesome names in the community that help build all these tools. So it's really, really dope. But more importantly, we were thinking of how many of you have ever been to a dev fest or heard of a GDG dev fest? 1, 2, 3, okay, 4. Cool. We're trying to see if we can drum up enough interest partnered with that. So pandemic times have made scheduling large conferences a little bit challenging, not only from a venue perspective, but also from an audience perspective and outreach perspective, right? Everyone kind of has their own idea of what to make out of it, but we're hopefully.
My plan is to leech off of another event while more people are in town and great speakers are here, so that we can bring the best.
That's usually been our
to you
game.
guys.
That's usually been our game. Like, you know, we try to find the best speakers for you folks, because not everyone can afford an $1,800 ticket to a conference, and not many people have opportunities for an employer to sponsor that ticket, more importantly. So we would like to try and see what we can get from a speaker perspective, and also reach out to y'all. Like, there's a lot of awesome people here that I'm sure you all want to share something too. So more than stuff out on that. Oh wow, you first. Yes, of course. So generally speaking, what we typically do is we do a blind call for papers, so you can submit any topic you want. Determining on the size and what venue we get, unfortunately that dictates how many speakers we can get. So if we get a really big venue, we can have a lot of speakers. If we get a tiny venue, because venues are kind of hard nowadays with restrictions and stuff, we make it a smaller step. But we have things like lightning talks too. There's plenty of ways to get involved, or if you want to speak at these events too, please, by all means, like we would love to have speakers for these events. We'd love to have more of these events too.
I was just asking, like I know some guys who organize the GDG Fest Ukraine, so.
Oh, cool.
I mean, if you need any, and there was like a lot of cool guys who
Yeah.
vendors, so if you need any help.
Yep.
Ukraine crew.
The Ukraine crew always puts on a big one if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Like, that's, yeah.
Yeah, we've gotten to know them over the years through like the internal community events. They're always looking for Chicago. Anything they want. They're awesome people.
Should we pull up names and do this thing?
Let's see if I can. Oh, you already filled up, or do you need names?
No, I'm doing names.
Okay, let me see if I can send it to you. How do you want me to send it to you? Is anyone still filling this thing out? Okay, cool.
Can we use her laptop?
Yes, but I don't know if I shared the form yet. Let me just share the form too.
Yeah.
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 Let's see. We'll see. You guys have fun? Was this a good event? Yes! Because they carried me.
Come on, AI.
Well, while Joel gets that going, I know at least, I believe Valeria and Amanda, this was your first like I.O. type of event you attended when you went to I.O. Connect in Miami. So what'd you like about it? What'd you take away from it? I know it was like free this year if you could get to Miami, but they announced it so late that it didn't help anyone, really. So I'd love to hear what you guys thought of that like side weird event that did that you're Mike.
Thank you. You're asking about like the Miami Google Connect one?
Yes, the one in like the
No,
the
one
day
that they
before
did.
I Connect. I think the bus
Yeah.
drove us to and then
Miami or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so, I went to Google I/O Connect. Honestly, I loved it. Dare I say, it was even cooler than Google I/O in Mountain, because there was so many things to do and so much to learn, and then there was like a Flutter specific section for mobile. So for me, it was super, super interesting, and then they had different workshops and stuff like that you could go to. Also, in my case, there were a lot of people from Latin America there, so for me, I felt really at home, and I met a lot of people from there. And then from that event, we were also I met a lot of folks who like had an interest in Flutter, and we were going to start like Flutter meetups in Ecuador and stuff like that, which for me is very, very exciting. So yeah, I really like the event, especially the networking part, meeting more people from Latin America who are in computer science and stuff, and then also the very, very informative talks. And then they have like these kiosks and stuff where they showed like their newer technologies that they're working on, and I thought that was very, very cool and very interesting.
I would say as a student, having the opportunity to go over there was very cool. You know, and as a developer as well, specifically for web, I was really eager to see how AI was incorporated in web. So it was really great to learn all of that as well. The demos were really fun to see what the Google developers have created. And they're all open source as well, so we're welcome to go use them. Well, yeah, it was definitely a great experience, and I learned a lot from it that I can bring back to my community and to my workspace.
Also, I got to meet Amanda there.
Yes.
Questions? Answers?
After whenever we finish here, I think probably a lot of us will be hanging around, so come please talk to us. If you have any other additional questions or whatever, just chat. One more question right there?
Okay, speaking of Flutter and the fact that you were working on iOS native, the struggle of Flutter is always trying to keep a common base between Android and iOS. Do you feel that this gap has been reduced? Or you still have to be less because you're running in Flutter instead of iOS and you switch?
That's a very good question. Honestly, to tell you the truth, so I love Flutter, especially the Flutter community, because it's very helpful to have people that you can ask questions to whenever you're wondering about something. And I will tell you that in general, even though I have found an iOS community, like the iOS, like the Apple team at Apple, they're a little bit hard to reach. So if you want to reach like their developers and stuff, that part has been difficult. But honestly, because that's the thing about the iOS ecosystem, that because it's so siloed, that also makes it a little bit more, like a little bit easier to use. So in that sense, like native iOS is like easier, I would say, in a sense. But then at the same time, if you want an Android app, which I have always worked in teams that had apps in like the same app in both stores, or wanted to deploy to both stores. I have never been like only developing an iOS app. That part's easier, so much easier to just have one code base. So if I'm weighing what is better from my vantage point, it is a Flutter database because of that. That will be, different from developer to developer, and it will depend on like your resources and how big your team is and all that sort of stuff to think about. But yeah, in my experience, the Flutter has been easier. Something that is a little bit more challenging is when you have like a very that I have worked in, and that is a little bit easier with native, is for example, if you have like Bluetooth and stuff like that, that gets a little bit more complex. Yeah, so it depends on what kind of project you're building.
Thank you.
Sorry, before the survey, just a quick reminder, there are some free t-shirts and stickers and pins in the back.
No.
Kotlin Conf Global event, so please take those. Yeah.
There was a good comment before the survey. Hello. Cool. It was, hey, I'm gonna be a recent grad. Isn't any company hiring? I work for a large organization. A few of us may. We may not be the right person to answer if we are recruiting in specific areas. But hey, coming to these events, asking a lot of speakers, maybe we can connect, and that's the goal. So like, not only is this to learn, but it's also to help people each other out. So yes, I can't say for sure what space it says computer science, but feel free to reach out to me. At least I'll be happy to say yes or no and maybe direct in the right path. With that said, let's spin this list and give away the gift. But do we want to say what it is first?
Sure, but I want to say, Alex, I'm sorry, you're totally right. We should have had a vegetarian option.
Yeah.
that was a failure on that. Anyways, we'll get that fixed. I swear. Yeah, so the prize is Pixel 7a. Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah, cell phone. Yeah.
I want to enter this.
Well, let's see who wins.
Oh, and fair warning, I totally arrived at my house today, so I'm gonna have to mail it to you.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Like if you're here, just come talk to us and we'll figure something out. We'll get it out, or we'll figure out how you can pick it up or something. Yeah.
There we go. All
All
right.
right.
Wheel of names.
Ooh, it's been a while since we've done this. I'm actually excited.
And
Sean Jaroneski, are you here? Come on up.
all right.
Awesome. Congratulations.
We don't know how many times we can do a big giveaway like this, but we've always tried to make it worthwhile to be back. I'm not gonna lie, I think this is what's the coolest thing for me is how many awesome people are here today from a lot of great communities. How many people are here today? I mean, we've had events from like 10 people, 20 people. I think this is probably the largest event.
So thank you to
Kotlin.
Kotlin Group, Flutter Group, GDSC. Always thank you for that. I'm probably forgetting someone.
Support
Oh,
local
GDG
communities.
Cloud, I guess.
Yeah. Support your local communities. Like
Thank
we're
you
here.
for Andrea for coming out. Yeah, or Andrea. Did I screw that up? Is it Andrea or
That's okay.
Andrea?
Don't worry, she'll just judge you forever.
I know, but I hate being that guy.
So no, I mean, look, support your local communities. We're here to help and learn from one another, and this is exciting. I'm just happy to see everyone back together. And
Whether you're here, whether you're on live stream, thank you so much for coming out, everybody. It really means a lot. Thank you.
we don't have the device on here, so how do we figure this out?
That's actually easier.
Yeah. So
I'm in crazy. Still way up there, but
we just gotta figure out how to get together.
yeah.
Are you listening?
Yeah, that's the general way.
So, yeah, email. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
If there is a need to help organizing like the GDG, the fast. Oh.
Joel's the person.
Oh, God. We typically announce it on. Let me see if I can end the stream.